Hey, good morning, everyone. Mic check working okay for everyone? Yes, all right. To reiterate a little bit what Angie said, I really appreciate everyone being here this morning. For us, it's an exciting day as an organization, and a lot of work that's gone into getting us to the point today where we can launch this program. So it's exciting for us, and I appreciate you being here, helping us share this information with our community, and celebrate this, actually, the work that's been done leading up to this program launch. So again, my name is Trevor Womack. I'm the Chief of Police. Angie mentioned the folks who are here with me. They've been involved in the program a little bit more, so they might be able to answer more of the technical questions better than I can, especially Acting Deputy Chief Brandon Ditto, who's here with me. So I'll say a few words to start out, and then I'll turn it over to him to get into more details about the program. I'd like to start out just stepping back a little bit, talking about our philosophy as an organization. It was a starting point. It's foundational for who we are and what we do. And that rests on the two pillars of principled policing and smarter policing. And really, boiled down in its essence, that's about being very efficient and effective about how we improve safety in our community, while also being very intentional about how we build trusting relationships with our community. So that's our guiding philosophy. And from that philosophy, we spent about a year casting a new vision for the organization and charting a course to get there. Right? That's our 3-year strategic plan that we created. And that plan has us as an agency focused in 3 primary strategic areas. Those are safety, legitimacy, and excellence. And what's exciting now, after all that vision casting and planning work that we've done, is we're beginning to see the results of that plan play out in real practical ways. And this today is one of those examples. And for us, the new technology that we're introducing today touches on all 3 of those strategic areas that I mentioned: safety, legitimacy, and excellence. So there's benefits there. There's multiple benefits that we could talk about, but I wanted to connect a little bit between those strategic areas. So when it comes to safety, for example, we're committed in our community to reducing crime and improving community safety, especially violent crime that we're seeing trending up in our community. And so this video evidence that we're going to be capturing in all of our day-to-day interactions and through our criminal investigations is going to enhance the quality of our investigations, documenting scenes better, documenting victim, witness, suspect statements, helping us successfully prosecute cases to bring justice to victims and hold offenders accountable when appropriate and necessary. So there's a safety component here to this technology. Secondly, legitimacy. We're committed as an organization to police legitimacy, which is really about building trusting relationships with our community and maintaining those relationships. We have a trust building plan that's on our website. And so this technology is just another tool in that plan around these ideas of transparency and accountability. And when I say accountability, it's of course accountability for ourselves, to hold ourselves accountable, but it's mutual accountability. It takes 2 people to be involved in an interaction or a relationship. So we hold ourselves accountable with this product, but also our community members as well, as far as how our interactions play out as we're interacting with our community. So there's a connection to police legitimacy with this technology also. And then finally, excellence. We are a learning organization. We're in the continual pursuit of excellence. We're always trying to do better, to learn along the way. This technology, having this objective set of eyes that can capture the work that we do in the field, allows us to debrief incidents and learn as we go, to sort of Monday morning quarterback what we go through, whether it's a use of force situation or more of a routine interaction on a traffic stop, what have you. We're able to debrief those now through the video technology and learn. It helps inform our training and our professional development and growth as individuals and as an organization. So there's direct connections here to the vision casting work that we did and our strategic plan development that has us focused on safety, legitimacy, and excellence. Finally, before I turn it over, I want to touch on the process a little bit because it seems like it's taken a while. It's been almost 2 years in the works to get us to where we are today. First of all, it started formally for us with the adoption of the budget, the funding for the program, back towards the end of June in 2021. And I'm very thankful for our council to prioritize this and recognize the importance of this program and dedicate the funding that's necessary to make it happen. That formally started the process for us back in June of 21. But then we immediately moved into a policy development process, which is fairly lengthy and in-depth also. We put a team of stakeholders together to develop this policy. We looked at policies that already existed from other agencies across the nation and here in Oregon. And we put together what we think is a very good quality, comprehensive policy. By the way, that was the first policy that we posted online as far as our transparency effort through our transparency portal. And we're going through another process right now so that eventually all of our policies will be available for public review online. But this is the first one that we finally posted on, or that we were able to post online. So we did that policy development process. And then that worked us into vendor selection. So we scanned the horizon on the various vendors that are out there that provide this technology now. We narrowed it down to a few pretty well-known major vendors, and then we decided to field test, pretty aggressively field test those products to make sure we had the best product for our agency. And we landed with the Motorola product that you'll hear about today. That included testing in the field in stress conditions like weather conditions, low light conditions, physical, how well the equipment stays on the officer in a confrontation, for example, but also the back-end technology, how well the system manages all the video evidence and sharing that type of with the DA's office, for example. So we assessed those vendors very well, and we landed on the one that's the best fit for our organization. So that took some time. And then we went through a purchasing procurement process as well, too. We have the city process that we need to go through, contract negotiations and so forth, so that work with legal review and IT review. Finally landed us to where we got a contract in place where we could acquire the equipment. There was a bit of concern with supply chain issues, like so many other products that are out there as we were going through our pandemic, that slowed delivery a bit, but the company came through at the end. We have all of our equipment in-house, ready to go by the end of the year, 2022, which allowed us for the past 6 to 8 weeks now to issue all the equipment to our officers, provide the training that they need so they can use it properly, and be ready to launch next week and actually turn the system on and use the program formally. So that's the overview I want to touch on before I turn it over to Acting Deputy Chief Ditto. And of course, we're ready to take some questions at the end also. So thank you very much. Brandon?
Thanks, Chief. So as the Chief mentioned, I'm Brandon Ditto. I'm the Acting Deputy Chief of our Support Division. Apologies for that. Brandon Ditto, Acting Deputy Chief of our Support Division here at the Salem Police Department. So the Chief gave you kind of a broad overview of the timeline of events that brought us to this point. There are some benefits that we have here in Salem is that although we would have rather had this technology a little earlier on, we had the benefit that we're not the first one in this space. We're not the first law enforcement organization that's been dealing with body-worn cameras. As a number of other organizations have been in the space for about 10 years. So we got to learn from them, especially with the vendor selection portion, of which cameras were very reliable and for a similar size organization of just like us, which ones would benefit us the most, what are reliable for not only evidence process, but also the hardware selection. So the 3 vendors that we selected were Axon, and you might know Axon from Taser. They're the ones, they used to be called Taser International, and they're the ones we purchase our Taser devices from. They're also heavily into the body-worn camera space, in-car video space, and some other technology. Also Motorola, the one that we ultimately chose. We use them for our radios, so you might be familiar with some of their radio products and things like that, but we do use those for our portable pack set radios that our officers wear and our in-car radios as well. Our other vendor that we looked at was GTAC. GTAC you might know from different laptops, tablets, things like that. The tablets in our cars, the laptops, the tough books, that's something that GTAC produces. And so we had somewhat of a connection to each entity as we're reviewing these products, but it was a totally new selection when we looked at body-worn cameras. As the Chief mentioned, in June we got authorization for the budget authorization for funding this program. That's when we transitioned into policy development, and then ultimately when we chose these 3 vendors, we had to go through a rigorous testing and evaluation process. So in that process, we had 12 different members of the department, as well as we communicated with the local district attorney's office in Marion County, Polk County, and also our city attorney's office as well. So we had representation from our patrol division, from our detectives, from our community action units, from our evidence section, records section, and our information technology section. So everyone evaluated the product in multiple ways. The Chief mentioned we did a stress test evaluation where we did skirmish testing to make sure the camera could hold up and be reliable. You've probably seen videos out in the field at times where the camera will fall off the officer because there are multiple mounting techniques from magnets to clips to actually sewing pieces onto an outer vest or on a chest harness. So we chose to rigorously evaluate that part of it as well. But also we were evaluating for here in Oregon. It's rains for a good majority of the year, and so there were some camera systems that didn't hold up as well, and you would see the lens get completely covered by water. So evaluating to that level and degree, that occurred from about March of 2022 until July when we finally selected our system. So we gave each vendor a month to evaluate their system. So we were evaluating not only the body camera systems, but also their in-car video systems. So what you're looking at here on the table, this is our body-worn camera. All these are examples of the body-worn camera as well. This is my personal camera that's been assigned to me. Motorola also offers interchangeable battery. So officers out in the field, when they go out, they have 2 batteries. That was the only vendor that offered 2 batteries. So for us, that's a great benefit, especially we've just implemented 12-hour shifts for our officers out in the field, and those can obviously extend depending on what type of call they're on. So when you're out for 12, 14 hours, battery life is a consideration. This is an example of our in-car systems. We currently have 4 vehicles outfit with in-car systems, and we're on the pace for about 2 a week. So it probably won't be till the end of the summer that we outfit our entire patrol fleet and a couple other ancillary vehicles. We have 60 patrol vehicles that will eventually outfit with in-car video as well. So it has 2 camera systems. One camera system is a forward-facing wide-angle lens camera system that gives you a pretty wide-angle view of just the front of the vehicle. This camera here is our back cabin camera, so that'll capture anything in the custody area. It also has a microphone attached to it as well, so you can capture anything that happens in that back cabin area inside the vehicle. This here is mounted inside of the car, so that will be mounted on the roof of the vehicle where you can tilt it down and move it in and out of the way, but the officer will be able to view the video on the screen inside the car, and they can also view it on their phone. So Motorola has a smart control feature, which is their application. It's just like a standard application you have on any cell phone. But what it can do for you is it can give you immediate viewing of your footage. So if an officer goes out into the field, they tap on their camera and for any of the incidents that are occurring out in the field. After that, they would turn off their camera once they've separated from that incident, and then they could immediately view it. It's Bluetooth connected to your phone and view the footage on their phone. So there are some restrictions for that. So for critical incidents, it's not the same way. Officers are not viewing their footage directly after a critical incident. Those cameras are collected. But for day-to-day business, that's exactly what you would expect to see, is an officer would be able to view it from their phone, from inside their car, so they can do routine business, complete reports, and follow through with the investigation at that point. So once we completed our whole testing process and evaluation in July, that's when we went through the procurement process, and we got all of the hardware on site, all of the software systems immersed within our computers and our technology here at the police department. And through from January 1 up through this week, we did our annual in-service training. So with that, we have about 96% of our officers have now been trained in the use of the body-worn camera system. There have been a few cameras out in the field. Up to 20 cameras have been out in the field through this process. We call them our super users. So they're well-trained officers and sergeants that are out in the field that are able to respond to questions as the mass of the department goes live with this program next week. So next Monday, the expectation is that officers will have these out in the field. Unless they're the handful of officers that we haven't captured through the training process up to this point, we're going to catch them at different times over the next month. And then you'll start seeing them out in the field. And that's what brought us here to today. So we do have an example of some of the footage that we've captured thus far. Normally with a video, you are going to have to heavily redact it. So what you'll see is 2 things on a video normally. Is one, we have a feature called record after the fact. So for 30 seconds of a video, you will see it play with no audio. We've done some modifications to streamline this video here, but you'll see 30 seconds you won't hear audio. And what that is that is the record after the fact feature. So if an officer quickly jumps out of their vehicle or responds to a scene and they tap their camera, they're likely going to want at least 30 seconds prior to that of what brought them to that point. You're going to want that captured. So when they tap the camera, 30 seconds prior to that, it's going to collect the images but no audio. So that's what you'll see on a lot of the videos that we'll release is 30 seconds, no audio, then you'll hear the audio click on. It's not because we modified the video or anything like that, it's simply because that was the time they pushed the button on their camera. And so when that happens, you'll see that. And then also in future videos that you'll see released, any faces will be redacted, so you'll see blurs on faces, you'll see license plates blurred, you might see computer screens blurred, things like that, that will cover those areas for privacy purposes, right? So when we're releasing this footage to the public or sometimes even to other entities, we'll redact that for the privacy of the people involved in the incident. The video in its raw form is never modified. That is always collected and kept preserved on our evidence platform, which is supported by the Motorola Cloud. So that is not deleted. We have strict retention policies through the city that have been they're with the city recorder's office. For Oregon law, it is at a minimum you will keep everything for 180 days. We keep everything for 190 days here at the Salem Police Department. And so that's any incident. If it's not tagged as a criminal incident, just some simple test video or training video, something like that, that's all kept for 190 days here at the police department. And then a maximum amount of time is 30 months. Now what that means is 30 months if it's not involved in a criminal incident. So you will likely see incidents where misdemeanor crime or felony crime, they can take a long time for prosecution. There are civil liabilities as well. So those retention periods are set forth in the Oregon Revised Statutes as well as our directive. So if we want to play the video here, this is just a sampling of the video. Like I said, this is one of our officers responding to a dog who was caught by his collar on a fence. And so, if you can play that. You kind of see he's got his collar caught and he's starting to get his arms caught within the post of the fence.
Okay. I'm coming, dog. Come here, buddy. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. You're a good boy. Please don't bite me.
So at this point, he's obviously trying to free the dog from the fence. It seemed like the dog had just jumped up there, and it was loudly moaning, and neighbors called in. As you can see, there's going to be some obstructions in the video, right? So a lot of times when they're chest mounted, you can see arms or other obstructions.
There you go, buddy.
Just from basic day-to-day activities.
You're okay. Come here. Come here, buddy.
Yeah, so after that, the officer made contact with the homeowners after the exigency of making sure the dog wasn't asphyxiated. After that, and they also contacted animal control. That's kind of standard for these procedures. But that's just a sample of the video. What was nice about that video that we selected is that we didn't have to go through that redaction process, right? There's not other faces, there's not the license plates and things that I talked about that might be a privacy concern. So we can show you a quick sampling of a video like that. But you can see the quality, you can hear the audio. You can see that there can be physical obstructions that occlude the lens of the video. That can happen in just day-to-day activity. And although there are other options that we're looking at for head-mounted cameras and things like that, the most durable and tested camera is the chest-mounted camera. So does anybody have any specific questions about the program?
Yeah, I have a question. So these Motorola cameras, how much do they cost and how much does the storage cost, and does this fit within the money allocated from the City Council back in June?
Yes.
2021?
So it's kind of a package deal, so it's hard to say individually how much they cost, because if you buy a certain amount, they give you a discount. It's just like any vendor. In a broad form, it's $413,000 is what we had for equipment, software, basically the technology aspect of it, so both the hardware and the software portion. We came well under that at around the $360,000 range. We have added a few things because we knew there was going to be, we have to patch into our CAD system. There's a cost involved with that. There are other software packages, and then a few more hardware upgrades that we didn't really foresee. Initially at the time, for example, we had 193 officers assigned, so we got our bid for 193 officers. We now have authorized 199, so we're going to have to purchase a few more cameras. But small costs still keeping us under budget annually over the 5-year term of the contract.
So we've seen how body cams can make a difference in different cases, like the Tyree Nichols case. So do you think that this will help with police accountability at all?
Yeah, so kind of as the chief mentioned, it's a mutual accountability, right? This gives us an objective viewpoint that we can use as a piece of evidence. It is one piece of evidence in investigation. It is much different looking at a football game from the viewpoint of the helmet or on the 50-yard line, right? So it is one piece of evidence. And that's why for us, it was very important that we had in-car video as well. Some of it was unaffordable with one of the other vendors. We just simply wasn't within the budget. So that was a big factor for us. We want more cameras out there. So we want to have the camera cabin. We want to be able to capture the front-facing video from the vehicle. So you have multiple viewpoints to capture the incident and all the evidence you possibly can.
What policies are you putting into place to make sure that those cameras are always used, or to investigate when they haven't been used and the reasons for that?
Yeah, so we talked about it a little bit earlier, but the very first thing that we did after we received budget authorization is we worked on policy development. So gathering the stakeholders who were involved in that, as well as presenting it to some community members and receiving feedback for that. And within the policy, and what I have here are some reference guides, and I'll be able to pass all these out to everyone. It's a quick reference guide that has some of our policy direction for the officers out in the field. It covers auto activation, required activations, recording restrictions, which can come in certain situations, child abuse victims, sex abuse victims, for not the same reason to continue the recording at that point. But then we do have our review process. So if a complaint comes in and someone from our professional standards section can review that video as part of the complaint process. So if something does come in that, or if we find training value in a video, there can be training value. This officer de-escalated the situation well. They used good tactical considerations for tailoring their team appropriately and having the best fit officers in the best circumstance of that incident. So
I guess my question is more, what accountability measures will be in place for officers who either forget to or choose not to turn the camera on when they're supposed to? So
it's dealt with the same as any of our discipline models. We have a progressive and consistent discipline model. So with that is that if it's a simple miss of activation, and within our directive also, they have a 60-day grace period. So for the first 60 days, starting on Monday, if an officer forgets to tap their camera on or something like that, there's a grace period for that, right? There's going to be, and we've already seen that. We've already seen officers that are like, oh my goodness, I really wish I would have captured that on my video, but I tapped it late. So there is a learning process with that. It is a new technology. But if it was a deliberate deactivation, that can quickly jump steps in our discipline model to make sure that progression is quicker. But in general, when you see the smaller inconsistencies of, oh, I didn't activate my camera properly, or for some reason it muted, or it was twisted sideways and I didn't correct it, things like that, much are dealt with training, but otherwise it is our discipline model.
And following up on her question really quick, it's along the same lines.
Yeah.
I just want to know who those stakeholders are that you consulted to create that policy, and also what community groups, organizations did you guys present this policy as well as your guys' plan for these county cameras?
Would you like to cover that, Chief?
Yeah, I appreciate that. There were some internal criminal justice partners involved in the stakeholder group, obviously, right? We have a close partnership with the District Attorney's Office on both sides as far as how we will use this evidence in criminal prosecution. So, of course, they were a key stakeholder. And then also our officers' union. I mean, our officers are very supportive of this program. We have broad support of this program, actually, from our residents, our officers, police leadership, our elected officials. So there's broad support for the program because everybody sees the benefit, but that was part of our stakeholder group as well. When it comes to the community component that you asked about too, I have an advisory council to the chief that I've developed over the past 2 years. There's 13 citizen members. That's a good cross-section of our community, and I meet with them on a regular basis, at least monthly, and we begin to introduce policy development and review through that advisory council with the chief. So we did a presentation. Once we had a policy developed that we thought was 99% ready to go, I presented that to the advisory council. We got some input and feedback before we finalized that policy. And then we also presented it briefly to our Community Police Review Board, which is a little bit more formal level of advisory group that's appointed by the City Council. So that's the mechanism we use to include some community input this time. But stepping back from this policy, we're looking at more ways to include input in policy training and practice for organization. We're trying to build that into the organizational processes more.
Thank you.
As media, of course, we're going to ask what your transparency policies are with that. What happens when a record request comes in for that body camera footage? What is the turnaround time and costs associated, that type of thing?
Yeah, so it's going to be held exactly like any other piece of evidence or record, right? It's just video now. And so we already have maybe security video camera footage, or there's other examples of videos that exist now that are handled in the same way. We're just going to have much more of it, of course. And so there was some additional staff that came to this program too to help manage that workload that we anticipate. So it's hard to say right now, since we haven't actually started the program until next week, what the workload is going to be and the impact, but we're committed to try and be as quick as with our process as possible and stick to the standards that we already have. So if it's evidence, a lot of times it will be connected to a prosecution and it can't be released, right? So there's times when we can't release things that are part of an ongoing prosecution. Non-evidentiary items are more easy to release. There'll be redaction that's required. So it'll be handled just like any other sort of records request. And we've added some additional staff capacity to try to make sure we can handle that and keep to our standards with release.
And in terms of the redaction process, I know like face blurring and things like that, sometimes there's not always the technical ability of all the staff to be able to do that. How many staff members do you have that are able to blur faces and things like that?
Well, before you arrived, we talked a little bit about no, it's okay. The capability of the system is one of the components that was a highlight for us with the system, is it does allow you fairly easily, the system itself, to blur out things like faces, license plates, computer screens with confidential information. So you'll see a lot of that type of redaction on releases that we're able to handle. We did hire at least one professional staff, support staff member, to kind of just deal with those records requests.
Will officers be allowed to review the body cam footage before writing a report?
Yes, so we view this as just another tool. I mean, officers already take notes during investigations and they review those notes before they write the reports. There's already things like security camera footage that you obtain during a crime scene investigation that you review as you're writing your report. We just look at this as another tool to help officers document very well in their reports what occurred. There is a difference there, though, for when it arises to, and Acting Deputy Chief Ditto touched on this, a critical incident. So if there's an officer use of deadly force, for example, that within our county triggers a protocol agreement that we have with our Marion County agencies and the district attorney. And those investigations are conducted by an outside agency. So we don't investigate ourselves when it's a deadly force incident. And so the investigating agency actually controls the steps in that process. And a lot of times that'll involve not allowing an officer to view the camera before giving a statement regarding that incident. So it kind of depends on what incident you're talking about. But for general law enforcement purposes, the work they're doing, yes, they'll be able to review that camera footage. Keep in mind, though, the system documents every view, every tag that's made on it. So there's an audit, there's an easy way to audit who viewed footage, how it's being used.
Okay, we are at our 30-minute cap, but I do realize that a couple of outlets came late. So are all y'all good with going for about another 10? You're good? Okay. Next question.
What's the policy on members of the public if they want to view footage from an arrest that they took part in, they want to review it? Is it going to be a cost to them? Is there going to be a lengthy wait? And then also, will the police department make an exception for granting media access if it has prevailing public interest? Maybe something that involves public outcry or questions about police conduct.
Yes, and Brandon can help me with this too, but I'll say at a high level, again, it's treated exactly the way our current records request policies exist. So we already do have ways to allow exemptions for the costs associated with media requests. Those are already built into our systems. This is going to be handled exactly the same way. Again, the difficult part as far as the transparency piece is for viewing footage. It really depends on the situation in the case. If it's an officer-involved shooting, for example, that's going to be completely controlled by an outside investigating agency and the district attorney. It's not going to be my decision whatsoever how that video is released or who gets to see it. So that'll be outside of our control. Internally, the things, lower level things that we have more control or discretion over, there's some discretion built into the policy where we can make decisions like that. But they will be handled like pieces of evidence. So similar to the way you would get a police report right now, or any sort of evidence to a crime, it would be scrutinized in the same way as far as ability to release that or public view.
And a lot of police departments already have been using this technology for years and years and years. Do you think it took way too long for you guys to get this in your hands?
I do think, and the reasoning honestly is the budgetary factor. I think there's been support and interest in this technology for years. It really does come down to the funding necessary for the program. So I do think we're a bit behind the times, only in the sense that right now, over the 18,000 law enforcement agencies across this country, the last data I saw was well over 50% have body-worn camera systems. So in my mind, it's becoming a standard piece of law enforcement equipment. But when it connects to the work that I said in the beginning, with safety, legitimacy, and excellence, I think it plays a key role as far as our vision being a modern, contemporary policing agency, a 21st century policing agency. I think this is a good step for us in the right direction.
If you could talk to one of your citizens out there, just quickly, like, we're doing this because we hope this does, what would you want to say to them?
I think it helps us with our trust-building efforts with the community. It does allow for more transparency and mutual accountability. For me, that's the biggest value. But it also does have a safety component where we can enhance the quality of our investigations, which is about bringing justice to victims and holding offenders accountable.
And then, was there an exact moment throughout the training and getting officers ready when you guys were finally like, okay, it's time to roll this out? Were there officers getting back to you saying, hey, this works? I want to hear an example of the moment or some moments when you guys said, okay, we're ready to roll this out.
For us, it really depended on all that background work that I talked about to where we could actually have the equipment in hand, ready to train and issue it. That's the moment. And that started for us just in January. So once we acquired the product and we were ready, we did quick training and issuance, and now we're ready to launch.
So I know that a lot of police departments, yours as well, have been struggling with staffing. Obviously, this is a different budgetary item that was paid by the city council, but is that taking away at all from money that could have gone towards staffing, and if so, how are you justifying that?
I think right now we have a significant number of vacancies, and that's not just Salem PD, that's in multiple agencies in Oregon and across the country. So there's already vacancies there that create some salary savings for us too when it comes to the budget. But this program, I don't believe, is taking away from our ability to add resources at all. I think it was built into the budget the right way. I think we do need more staffing. As Lieutenant Ditto, Acting Deputy Chief Ditto mentioned, we had 193 authorized sworn positions when we started this process. Now we have 199. So we've actually added positions to the department. So this program hasn't hampered our ability to grow as an organization.
And you said that the body cams will be in all the officers' hands or on them by the summer or on Monday?
No, the body camera piece, we're ready to go. There's a few left that still need to get training, just a handful of officers. So the equipment's been issued, they'll be wearing the body cameras. It's the in-car cameras that take a little longer for the installations to occur. So you'll see body cameras in the field on all our sworn police officers. And you'll see in-car video coming in slower, maybe throughout the summer.
And you'll have that date in the press release that I issued. For those who came late, I'll give you one before you leave. Artie, you had a question?
Yeah, and I don't think you confirmed this. If you did, I apologize, but how much is the actual contract in total and what's the timeline?
So we can provide the exact number, but for me it's about $400,000 annually, and we have a 5-year agreement that comes in within that budget with the Motorola vendor.
So it sounds like the grant from the state legislature will cover the first 2 years of that?
We did get a couple years through grant funding to support the program, yes.
And then this just kind of came to me, but I know that the DA's office, when there's an officer involved shooting, oftentimes they release photos, videos that they have from surveillance and stuff. I know you said it's not your decision, but do you expect these videos to become an element of those grand jury announcements?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any criminal case, but especially for an officer involved shooting a deadly use of force investigation, they're going to be critical pieces of evidence. You do see the DA releasing photos from security footage and so forth. This is going to be additional video footage that they'll have and they'll be able to release. After we get past that grand jury piece, that external investigation and the findings by the grand jury, then I do have more say and control over what we release as an organization. So it's just during that investigative period where they have full control over that. So it's not to say that I may not decide to release additional or other video afterward as well.
Yeah, and one other thing I thought about in that regard is that 190-day period, I assume that, I mean, I shouldn't assume, is that only if an investigation is not active?
Yes, Brandon touched
So-
on that a bit. So
yeah.
if something's tagged as actual criminal evidence, then it's going to be a year, 2 years. It's a much longer retention process because we have to get through the adjudication process. So this is just the routine capturing of video, no matter what type, it's minimally held for the 190 days.
Yeah, so just to touch on that very briefly is, any video that is captured on the camera system has to be tagged with some sort of tagging. So we do have a test tag, so if we're just toying with the camera right here and I activate it and then deactivate it, I can tag it as a test tag, and then it'll upload that into our evidence platform. But there's different evidence taggings for felony crimes, misdemeanor crimes, violations, and each one of those categories has a different retention period. So each retention period, again, it's a combination of what is in the Oregon Revised Statutes, making sure we meet those standards, but then also our own internal standards if we want to maintain it for a little longer to make sure we can be responsive to any requests that come based on those standards.
So, sorry, a portion of this is covered by the grant. Could you break down what portion will be city budget, what portion is state grant?
Again, it's about $400,000 a year annually, and we got some state grant funding to cover the first 2 years.
Okay, so that went quick, didn't it? We can do one more question, and then we can break out for does anyone want to stand up or solo? Anyone?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so at least one. Okay, so one more question and then we'll close.
So I know this was expected to go live last summer, or around last summer. What was the reason for the delay? Was it supply chain? Was it crafting the policies? Is there a specific reason?
The policy we got done within the first few months. It really was the vendor selection process, the purchasing, acquisition process, and then the slight delay we had with supply chain issues. Actually, every vendor was in the same situation. It wasn't just Equal. So regardless of which vendor we choose, it would have delayed the execution of the program a bit. We were happy to at least get it off by the end of 22, basically, on hand, so that we could launch it early this year.